Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Um, Mary, would you please do the roll call? We need 11 members for a quorum. And Michael Rodriguez notified us he's unable to attend, so he should be listed as excused.
Jerry, I'm not seeing Mary.
Mary, she's there, but she's on mute.
Okay.
Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
So everyone has been muted upon entry. So if you have been called to speak, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Well, while we're waiting for Mary.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Chair.
just one minute. I forgot to read the how people could participate in public comments. I'll go through this real quickly. If you're listening and viewing by video, click on the participant window and then click on raise your hand feature in the participant window. The participant window is at the bottom of the screen. It says participants. Then everybody that's on the video, video will be listed, and at the bottom to the right, you'll see raise hand. If you're listening in via telephone, you can make a comment by pressing *9. Comments will be taken in the order that they are received in the queue. Please note that public comments can be made up to 3 minutes. At the end of your 3 minutes, the engineer will ask for a closing comment and pass the mic on to the next public member. I'd like to just add that you could comment at any time during the meeting on any of the items. So if you make a general comment, it's 3 minutes, but you have a total of 5 minutes. So if you want to speak on another item, you have 2 minutes. Okay, now let's do the roll call. And again, we need 11 members for a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Claudia Arman.
Here.
Ratan Bhavnani.
Here.
Nancy Borchard. Gain Brooking.
Gain is here. Let me.
I think she's muted, isn't she?
Hold on a second. Let me get her.
She has her hand raised.
Yep. Go ahead, Gain. You can press *6 and unmute yourself.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gain.
Hold on.
We can hear you now.
Come on, we can do this.
We can hear you. Okay, she muted herself.
Okay, Kevin Clarisi.
I'm here.
Margaret Cortese.
Here.
Jesse Finkbeiner.
Here.
Captain James Freihoff.
Here.
Monique Garcia. Janice Gardner.
Here.
Jerry Harris is here.
Here. Yeah.
Patricia Malone.
Here.
Nielsen. Supervisor Parks.
Here.
Joe Ramirez.
Here.
Michael Rodriguez is absent. Carol Thomas.
Here.
Marlon Torres.
Here.
And Sherry Valley.
And Gain is ready to go ahead, Gain. Go
Hi,
ahead,
I'm
Gain.
here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm here. Also, Patricia Malavi is here.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep, I'm here.
And once you have called in, please go ahead and remute yourself so we can maintain any noise disruptions in the background.
Okay, so how many members are present today?
So I think I have 17.
Oh, good. So we have a quorum. I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting. This is a difficult way to go, but you know, it'll allow us to continue our work and the more we get used to it, the smoother the meetings will go. Supervisor Parks, would you like to introduce your prospective appointee? I think she's here.
She may be as a member of the audience. On tomorrow's agenda, we have an item to appoint CJ Keaveney, a resident of Newbury Park. And she has graciously agreed to serve. And so we're looking at the Board of Supervisor approval tomorrow. I don't know if you'd want her to talk about her position or her experience, but I know that she has had some great leadership experience, worked for ARC of Ventura County, been on the Ventura County Leadership Academy. She's an alum of that, and has been a leader in our community out here in the Conejo Valley. And she has some good experience as a family member, and also I think offers some very great input into our discussions. I look forward to that. Also offers some diversity. You know, since I have the floor, I just want to comment that we should take a look at how we are meeting the requirements that, for example, consumers, family members, and that we match the diversity of our community, and see what we need to do to get up to the thresholds that we're required to meet.
Okay, we could do that. I don't know if Carol's on or not, but I read her background and experience and was very impressed. And if you're there, we're really looking forward to working with you.
Carol is here, just so you know. And she's
Oh, good.
unmuted now. Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work with everyone. I think I'll just wait next month and have a formal introduction, if that's fine.
Yeah, that's great.
All
I
right.
just wanted, since you're here, I just want everybody to know what's taking place tomorrow, and you will be joining us.
Yes.
Welcome to the BHAB.
Thank you.
Okay, could we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. This is Claudia.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Second, Carol.
Okay. Ratan, do you want to do the roll call on the agenda?
Yes, sure. Okay, to approve the agenda, I'm going to do a roll call vote, starting with Claudia Armand,
Yes.
Ratan Babnani, that's me, yes. Nancy Borchert. I hear no response. Moving on. Gain Brooking.
Here, yes.
Thank you. Kevin Clarisi.
Yes.
Dr. Margaret Cortese. Margaret Cortez, you're on mute, are you? I'll move on. We'll come back. Jesse Finkbeiner.
Yes.
Commander James Fryhoff.
Yes.
Okay. Monique Garcia. No response. Janice Gardner.
Yes.
Mary Hafner.
Yes.
Patricia Molawi.
Yes.
Denise Nielsen. I hear no response. Supervisor Parks.
Yes.
Joe Ramirez.
Yes.
Michael Rodriguez is not here. Carol Thomas.
Yes.
Marlon Torres.
Yes.
Sherry Valley. Okay, no response. And Jerry Harris.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
so
Sherry Valley just joined the call.
I just unmuted. Yes.
great. Thanks, Sherry. The motion carries. May we have a motion to approve the agenda of our last meeting? I'm sorry, the June 15 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve. Janice Gardner.
Is there a second?
Jesse Finkbeiner, second.
Very good. Ratan?
Okay, Claudia Armand,
Yes.
Ratan, that's me, yes. Nancy Borchert? No response. Again, Brooking?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Teresi?
Yes.
Margaret Cortese?
Yes.
Thank you. Jesse Finkbeiner?
Yes.
Commander Fryhoff?
I was absent, so I will abstain.
Abstain. Monique Garcia? Not here. Janice Gardner?
Yes.
Mary Hafner?
Yes.
Patricia Malabi?
I was absent, so I will abstain.
Thank you. Denise Nielsen? Okay, not here. Supervisor Parks?
Yes.
Joe Ramirez?
Yes.
Michael Rodriguez is not here. Carol Thomas?
Yes.
Marlon Torres?
Yes.
Sherry Valley? Sherry, approving minutes?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sherry.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. And Jerry Harris?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Public comments. If you would like to make a public comment at this point, please raise your hand or press *9 on the
Yeah.
telephone.
We have a public comment from Elizabeth.
Hi,
Okay.
can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. During the past week, I have had the pleasure of reading the latest EQRO report now posted to the VCBH website. Completed in February of this year, I found lots of detailed information on initiatives and programs that was helpful in developing a greater picture of what is really happening throughout the continuum of care in Ventura County. I encourage everyone who has the honor of officially sitting on the BHAB and anyone who sees fit to make comments to it or opine on the characteristics or qualities of behavioral health care services funded by Medi-Cal to read it and become familiar with the data. Whether you agree with it or not, facts must be the starting point for any comments or actions. In concert with that suggestion, I would like to remind people who hold an official seat on the BHAB of their roles as stewards of the community interest in a full spectrum of quality behavioral health care services. You were selected, though not elected, to represent all members of the entire Ventura County community. Legally, the law mandates representation of varied identified interests, such as family members and individuals who use services, sometimes called consumers, clients, or peers, as well as members from various cultural and linguistic communities throughout our community. To ensure the plethora of voices can be heard in such a legally mandated diverse body, individuals who primarily identify with one or another specific stakeholder group are seated around the table. As is human nature, most often when one forms opinions and shares them, it is generally from the perspective with which he or she most closely identifies. Therefore, it is helpful when speaking to identify from which perspective one is offering a comment. For example, while there are times when different stakeholders may agree, the very fact that the law mandates a variety of perspectives reveals that there will be occasions on which grave differences in perspectives and priorities will need to coexist and to be accommodated and included in any resulting actions or communications that are intended to represent the sentiment of the BHAB. Therefore, it is imperative and perhaps legally mandated that statements claiming to express the will of the VHAB in its advisory capacity incorporate and reflect all diverging opinions. Again, it is most helpful in ascertaining the varied perspectives and multiple truths born of differing experiences that speakers reiterate from which position their point of view originates. Ultimately, a community body cannot be considered representative of community preferences if it is held hostage by a minority which flexes bureaucratic machinations to impose its will. To summarize, there are data, there are multiple viewpoints grown from varied personal perspectives, then opinions are formed about data using personal points of view. Since it is inherent and intended in the structure of the board that these views will differ, I strongly encourage each of you to reflect on your roles as representatives for both your unique contributions, but also your greater responsibility as spokespersons for the larger Ventura County community. When communicating, please be clear in whose voice you claim to be offering your advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments?
There are no other public comments via the hand raised feature.
Okay, well, let's move on to the chair announcements. This past week, we lost a true American hero, John Lewis. He's a unique fellow that really wouldn't take no for an answer if he believed he's right and wouldn't give up. I think a lot of people will miss him greatly. And the work he did brings us closer to what Dr. King said about judging people by the quality of their character. I remember watching the riots and the marches in the 50s and 60s and couldn't believe that people could be so cruel to other people and still believe that. So in terms of his leadership, I'm sure that's going to go on. He's worked with a lot of other people to help represent the views that he espoused. So I just wanted to take note of that for a moment. The other thing is that we are working with Zoom meetings, and as I said before, it's a little difficult until we get the hang of it, but there's no reason why our work can't continue, and that the expectation that progress will be made quickly, I don't think we could look forward to that. It takes time. It goes baby steps, but we do get progress. And we've recently seen that with the increase of chairs at the IPU and the increase in beds. So we are making progress. In terms of recognition awards, we have 2 people that resigned, and we will be sending them certificates. Unfortunately, we can't present them personally, but Gina Petrus and Jamie Banker, I'll be working on their certificates this week. In the past couple weeks, I think, there was an article in the Ventura County Reporter that highlighted the difficulty some people have in getting services and talked about the continuum of care. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and maybe if you like, we could further discuss this on an agenda item in an upcoming meeting. But we do have some gaps in terms of the continuum of care. And this is not reflecting on anybody, particularly it's just, that's the situation the county's in. So what can we do to help improve that is what we need to look at. And with that, that concludes my comments. Dr. Johnson, would you like to give the director's report, please?
Thank you, Chair Harris. Good afternoon to you all. Dr. Dinnering, who is over the Substance Use Services Division, will first come with her report for her division, and that will be followed by Dr. John Shipper, who represents the Adult Division, and then I will follow up with my report. Dr. Dinnering?
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to give a few quick updates on what's going on in substance use services. We've talked quite a bit about the fabulous work our staff have been able to do with the remote client services and telehealth services. And I just wanted to report that for our DUI program, we are now serving close to 1,500 clients remotely through 99 groups per week and individual sessions. With the courts reopening and increased collaboration with probation, we've increased our enrollments in June by 22%, so that's very exciting. Another update is within our DMC ODS plan on July 1st, we began an integration pilot with the Mental Health Access Line team. So collaborating to consolidate the lines after hours with mental health and SUD access, and it has been smooth sailing thus far. So I want to say thank you to Dr. Schipper and Julie Glantz and the entire team for this wonderful collaboration as we work towards our behavioral health integration. And the last thing I just wanted to report is with our outpatient clinics, we've been continually engaged in increasing an engagement within our telehealth services since the beginning of the COVID emergency. And from April to June, we've had an 85% increase in group units per service and a 33% increase in individual units per service. So we are working very hard to engage these clients, knowing how difficult it is. And I'm just very thankful to our staff and leadership for all the work that we've done. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Schipper?
Hello, yes. I have just a couple of things to report. First off, I don't think I've mentioned that we undertook about, a month ago, a survey of CIT stakeholders, and it was with an eye towards looking at that program, which has been by all descriptions very successful. But as we start to have to consider financial implications and the fact that even good things can be improved, we thought it best to start with the stakeholders themselves, the rank and file law enforcement folks who are on patrol. And the goal is to get feedback both in terms of the current program and what people might like to see in terms of changes going forward. And to date, we've got 310 respondents, I think. I think when we're all done, we may be somewhere close to maybe 800 or more. So we're less than halfway there. And the plan is to get that data collected. And once we do, sit down with it and really sort of sort through what it tells us about what people like, what people would like to see more of. And so I trust you'll probably hear more about that in the future. The other thing I might mention is on the adult side, we have been kind of challenged, I guess you could say, by the fact that one of our long-standing board and cares in Ventura is in the process of changing hands. La Siesta has gone into escrow with a buyer, kind of an investment group, as I understand it, in Ventura. The good news was that once we were able to be in touch with those investors, turns out they were interested and, frankly, very amenable to the idea of continuing on as a board and care. So we're in the process of working through those details. It's going to be a little bit tricky because there's not only a real estate transaction that has to be executed, there's also community care licensing that factors into licensing the facility, and it would also precipitate the need to find a new provider, basically. But we've taken that on, and we're in the process. We're also keeping an eye on the fact that the owners, who in this instance have opted to sell, own another board and care, and so we're in communication with them to try and be in front of any plans they may have to change hands with that other board and care. So it's, in the meanwhile, the Ventura Clinic especially has been tasked with trying to find alternative housing for folks, and the hope is to be able to move people back as soon as possible. It seems very unlikely, but we haven't totally given up hope, but it seems unlikely that people will be able to continue occupancy throughout the process. So we're kind of planning for the worst case scenario, which is temporarily at least moving people to an alternative in the hopes of then bringing them back. So that's all that I have to report on the adult side.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to provide some comments on some of the recent occurrences impacting behavioral health. Our county has greatly expanded its mental health services in the last decade. This includes a locked facility, Horizon View at the Camarillo Airport, Hillmont House residential treatment step down for those leaving the IPU, and last year, a crisis stabilization unit was started for those who don't need to be hospitalized and can be stabilized. In addition, as mentioned by Chair Harris, we have recently got approval to add 6 more IPU beds and funding for 4 more chairs in our CSU, something that was identified as needed and was heard. We continue to work with St. John's to bring online an additional CSU that will ultimately have a maximum capacity of 20 chairs, as well as working with private partners to bring additional CSUs to the county and another IPU. Work is being done in this area to expand the current services already offered and increase capacity to better meet the need in the county. In 2022, we anticipate construction of residential housing for older adults with mental illness. Also, in the last decade, we've added programs that put caseworkers on the streets to treat people who are resistant to coming in for services, and Laura's Law that utilizes the courts to encourage those who are mentally ill to accept services. Personally, as a mother and having a close loved one myself that has struggled with lifelong debilitating mental illness, I do not take lightly the need to provide or make for the provision of services to stabilize and allow one to function at their highest level. I also realize that simply serving individuals in an involuntary status in locked placement is not ideal. The state showed their understanding of this with the CalAIM initiative that spoke to creating more IMD capacity and also explicitly calling for length of stays to be decreased to 30 days and assessment to be done in order to step down individuals to lower level of care in the community as soon as clinically possible. What is clear and cannot be disputed is the scope of the BHAB and the authority provided to all as BHAB members. Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 5604.2, lays out the powers and duties of the Mental Health Board. This statute establishes the BHAB's review of services, but authorizes the Mental Health Board to make recommendations to the local governing body, the Board of Supervisors, and the local mental health director. The statute does not call for the BHAB to share its feedback with other elected officials or the press. The statute indicates that the Board of Supervisors may transfer additional duties or authority to the Mental Health Board. However, this has not been done in Ventura County. The BHAB is set up with protocols in place for effecting change. Governance and order matter. County Council has clearly indicated the county position that such practices of going outside of this scope are not acceptable. More than this, the California Association of Local Behavioral Health Boards and Commissions have weighed in, stating that such behavior may be cause for removal. What is more of concern to me, however, is the stigma, demonization, and marginalization of those living with severe and persistent mental illness, whether they be our consumers, potential consumers, or those that may need our services but are scared to trust. Detailing publicly one's most darkest and intimate moments for all to see is demoralizing, to say the least. If a behavioral health staff were to do so, their licensing body would be contacted to discipline them and sanction or revoke their license. And Human Resources would review the acts to determine if termination is needed. Laws are in place to protect the confidentiality and protection of such personal health information. Hypothetically, in theory, someone's information has been widely shared across the county and the state of California, and they have never provided any permission for this to occur. This is unconscionable. The BHAB's charge is to advocate for the full rights and protection of clients. This includes the right to privacy and dignity that comes with refraining from sharing such intimate details of one's life. To make blanket statements using fear-mongering and questioning if a mentally ill person will be the next mass shooter in our county is beyond unfortunate, especially when research has shown that in general, those that are living with lifelong mental illnesses are not generally violent. And when they are, it is usually violence against themselves. Such acts only serve to further incite the fear of the mentally ill and law enforcement who are just trying to do the best that they can to protect our county to reach out, questioning if certain people on their radar are the individuals referenced. It is callous to be appointed to advocate for a group of people only to further alienate and continue the false narrative of them being feared in the community. My question for all of you is this: who among any of us is okay with our own personal health information being shared publicly without your consent? Who would be okay with several elected state and county officials, along with the LA Times, Ventura County Star, and BC Reporter, digging into your private health details without your consent and maybe even your knowledge? Would any of us be okay with this? This department is being unjustly attacked and targeted for following the laws and regulations that are in place, for the role that other agencies have played that are not in our purview and we have no authority over, for the nationwide shortage of locked placements that the state of California has acknowledged, and pre-COVID, we're working to increase capacity, and mostly for the policies enacted decades ago, system-wide, both federally and locally, that impact the treatment of the severely mentally ill, such as definitions of grave disability. Surely, one department of a county with 860,000 people cannot be responsible for all of this. Per County Council, the communication sent on June 24th was not written as a private citizen because it was clearly prefaced with the following: I submit this, and I quote, I submit this in my capacity as a member of the Executive Committee of the Ventura County Behavioral Health Advisory Board, end of quote. The BHAB silence only further endorses these actions. I was a recipient of a June 28th email, along with other BHAB exec members, that the writer stated they would be happy to send an addendum to all that received the open letter, stating that the letter was not a statement from the BHAB. However, over 3 weeks have passed, and I have yet to see this statement sent out. If this board is aligned with these recent actions, it is within my right to ask, Who will advocate for the client's rights? Who will be a voice for our clients? As referenced by our chair, Jerry Harris, Congressman John Lewis died this past Friday, a man who gave his life fighting for justice and the rights of all people. I would think even the rights of the mentally ill would be a torch he would pick up. One of his well-known quotes reads, "When you see something that is not right, not just, not fair, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something. Our children and their children will ask us, what did you do? What did you say?" We have a mission and a mandate to be on the right side of history. End of quote. I have a mission and a mandate to be on the right side of history. I respectfully ask this BHAB to be on the right side of history, to be the voice for persons living with mental illness, to stand up and fight any further stigmatizing, demonizing, and fear-mongering of people living with mental illness, to demand the privacy and the dignity of those with mental illness. I hate that I have to say this, but seeing that only one BHAB member has spoken up, it leaves me with no other choice. I urge this board to publicly insist that the addendum be sent out by the writer, as stated in the June 28th email, stating that she was in error sending an open letter as a BHAB member, seeing it was never agendized, discussed, or voted on as a board. That there is clarification that this was sent as a private citizen, and it be sent as far and wide as the original communication. I urge this board to then take that letter and publicly write a document denouncing and having zero tolerance for any person that adds to or perpetuates the practices of stigmatization, demonizing, fear-mongering, discrimination of, and violating of protected health information of individuals with mental illness by anyone on this board in perpetuity. Finally, I need to speak to every consumer or potential consumer of mental health services in our county that might see this meeting. I need you to know that this department remains grieved by these acts attacking the mentally ill. We have work to do in educating our board, and we are committed to doing so. We will steadily work to improve service and resource gaps to serve this community. And more than anything, we take your privacy and your dignity as a human being, regardless of a diagnosis, very seriously. We will fight for you if it costs us our jobs, our reputations, and any privileges that come with that. Your privacy is of utmost importance to us. And while we cannot control the actions of all, specifically the advisory board, behavioral health staff will never, ever break your trust or expose your intimate health information without regard. I thank you in advance for your trust in us, and we will continue to show you that we are here for you and have your best interest in mind. Thank you. This concludes my statement.
Okay, let's move on now to board member comments. Are there any board members that have comments?
Let's see, hold on. Raise hand. Here.
We have three in the queue. We have Mary Hafner, then Supervisor Parks, then Janice Gardner.
How do you get on the queue?
Raise your hand.
Press,
No,
in the participant window, Margaret, click
Yeah.
on the participant. At the bottom of that window, you'll see a raise your hand. So click that so that we can take them in the order they're received.
I'm not getting a raise with your hand. I'm clicking on where it says 44 participants.
So click on that window, and at the bottom of that white block of names, at the bottom, it will say raise hand.
Oh, okay.
And now we have 5 in the queue. Are you ready for the first one, Jerry?
yes.
Okay, Mary Hafner, and I'm starting 3 minutes now.
Yes, this is not a board member comment. This is a direct, I'm going to address the comments made by Savette Johnson. Those comments that she was talking about as somebody in a third person, she's talking about me. She's talking about a letter that I sent out because I was very concerned about a situation involving a young person who is suffering from serious mental illness, who had been 51, 59 times. His mother had been in front of the BHAB twice to talk about her son openly, and she shared specific information about her son. But one of the things that I think is very concerning is that we're not addressing the real issues here. We're demonizing me as somebody who is callous and unconscionable. All of you who know me know that my time on this board has been spent doing nothing but advocating on behalf of the seriously mentally ill. My son has serious mental illness. I do not take it lightly when somebody wants to call me callous and that I'm attacking the mentally ill. I'm coming from a place of I get it. I understand the illness, and I would never, ever treat somebody the way that Savette Johnson just treated me just now with her statement. That was major gaslighting. It was deflection. And it is something, I serve on this board voluntarily because I believe we can make a difference. I believe each and every one of us can make a difference for a population that suffers greatly. Their families suffer greatly. And I will tell you, people reach out to me all the time to tell me of the stories of their families, what they are going through, and the gaps in services. But for our director to change this whole narrative and call me somebody as attacking the seriously mentally ill and unconscionable, I find that to be, that is gone above and beyond something I never even thought I would see on this board. This is not my public comment because I do have a public comment, but I felt like I need to let you all know that I do everything in my power for the good of the seriously mentally ill. I want services for them. I want less homelessness. I want less incarceration. I want to make sure people understand, but I tried to get people to listen earlier. And if it took a letter for me to send that I sent maybe in contravention of some law or some bylaw, I apologize for that. I apologize for any kind of thing that I did that wasn't within the guidelines. But I see it as a deflection mechanism. We need to address the issues of people getting out of the CRT without any kind of supports and just thrown out without calling their families. I want this board to know what is going on in our community with the seriously mentally ill. And there are some who do not seek services voluntarily. It's a reality of the illness and we need to address it. Thank you.
That's 3 minutes. Next is Supervisor Parks. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Savette, you brought a tear to my eye. The idea that someone with mental illness can recover is, to me, one of the most important things for us all to remember, and to do everything we can to see that happen. And the idea that one could have mental illness, get cured, recover, and then find out that his record has just been spread across the state of California, affecting his ability to get a job or her ability to get a job. I mean, that is out there. And that to me, no matter what the motivation is, that's the whole basis of HIPAA. And when you think about HIPAA, you know, to protect people's medical records, I probably wouldn't mind so much if they knew I had, you know, some kind of heart thing, but for people to know that I had mental illness, that to me is, it really does attack all people with mental illness, because it makes them realize that what they want to be secret is not secret, and it's their right. And that individual may have signed off for his mother to have the information, but does that mean everybody else in the world gets it? So that to me was a real disservice to that individual and his future. And I also understand the desire of a mom wanting to see better services. And there's ways to do that. And there are many things that we have done in the county to enhance our services, an incredible amount. And that's a large part because we have the Mental Health Services Act. And I'm not saying that we are that we've done everything we can do. There's more to do, but how we go about doing it is we can attack or we can collaborate. And I've been in this job long enough to know that you can get a lot more done through collaboration. You can get things done. Also, how important it is to be accurate. And I would just like to say, I know there's information that's out there that was inaccurate, but it was harmful. And I hadn't even thought about the point about the fact that it's suggesting this person could become a mass shooter. I mean, on top of the fact that people now know that the individual has been incarcerated or locked up or confined, they also are now being told that he could become a mass shooter. So there's already tremendous stigma to mental illness. This individual, I think, is harmed, but also it sends a message to others with mental illness that this could happen to them too, that they could be used as the poster child for someone who's trying with a good heart, wanting to fix the system, but doing it in a way that isn't understanding of the implications to the individuals that it affects. So I thank you for speaking up. It's not an easy thing to do. And I didn't know that you were going to, but of all the things that were said in the letter, that issue about the medical history was the one that, as an advocate for clients, that to me hit the hardest. So thank you for bringing that up. And I do have something else on the board comments that I'd like to say, but I know that people are wanting to talk about this issue, so I'll wait on that. Thank you, Svet.
Of course, Supervisor.
The next one is Janice Gardner. Go ahead, Janice.
Hi. Thank you, Jerry, for your comments about Mr. Lewis, and I hope that he does get honored properly by this country as he should be, with the ideas that people are discussing right now. And I appreciated your comments about this wonderful congressman and statesman. So thank you for that. My comments are not about this issue. I had a couple of announcements that I wanted to read. One is that Detention Services is working toward the establishment of a jail-based competency treatment program. This program will allow felony defendants who have been deemed by the courts incompetent to stand trial to be immediately admitted and treated for competency restoration. Commander Mike Hartman will be giving a presentation all about this next month in August. and I'll be coordinating the time with Chair Harris. More police training is on its way in Oxnard, including the de-escalation tactics and courses on race relations. Police Chief Scott Whitney said state guidelines on de-escalation are not enough, and Oxnard will build on that by emphasizing effective disengagement training. By the end of the year, Chief Whitney wants to add courses to police training on implicit bias, cultural proficiency, history of race relations, history of police brutality, and other topics. The Ventura County Medical Center has been selected to receive a $15 million grant from the California Health Facilities Authority for the construction and operation of equipment of a pediatric unit. Having local access to these critical care pediatric services takes the burden from families and critically ill children, so they do not have to travel far to get the care for their critically ill children that are in need. And that's it for me as far as the announcements are concerned. So we can go to the next speakers right now. Thank you.
Joe Ramirez is next. Go ahead, Joe. Unmute yourself.
Yes, I wanted to thank Dr. Johnson for the comments and support the idea of some sort of a motion to, at very minimally, that all BHAB board members follow the protocols and the regulations of HIPAA, and that all things be kept private, that, without consent of any individual, and even at that point, whether or not that's our responsibility to do so. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's a very important, I think, responsibility of the board. So I support the idea of a motion. And again, thank you, Dr. Johnson. I do have a couple things that I wanted to mention regarding the District 3 area in Santa Paula, Fillmore, Piru. And there have been some disparity meetings that have taken place with members of the communities of Fillmore, Santa Paula, and Piru with county officials over the COVID pandemic here in our Heritage Valley. And I think we're making some good progress in being able to have a real partnership and discussion and be able to find out where and how we can get either more testing or more information out to populations such as farm workers that haven't had that. And there's been an increasing number of cases found in essential workers that we call essential workers that are farm workers. So we continue to have the ear of county officials, and we're appreciative of that. The second thing is that Santa Paula Hospital Blue Ribbon Committee continues to meet, and that's another very high level conversation that's taking place within our valley, and very important one because of the services that Santa Paula Hospital can provide. So I just want to make sure that folks are aware that there are partnerships, there are, and we don't always agree, but there is that doors that has been open. We've really managed to be heard, and I think that's what people want to be able to do, is be able to be heard about what's going on. And then finally, in Fillmore, a town that has felt sort of ignored in a lot of different ways for various resources, but are beginning to, even within the city and within certain populations, there have been some, an awareness has been brought that I've never seen before, having grown up here in Fillmore and live here now, that there is an awareness and discussions going on about race, about youth and mental health issues, and issues about probation. And so the concerns that some youth have in having to travel from Fillmore all the way to Oxnard if they don't have transport, there are a lot of different issues. So there's a lot of movement going on that I hadn't seen before, that I want to share more and more with this committee, this board, and as well as the county. So, but again, thank you, Dr. Johnson, for your comments.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Maris.
Okay, the next person is Sherry Valley. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sherry.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to echo Supervisor Park's comments. I totally understand that mother, and I have been in her shoes, and I have been really frustrated, and I wanted to scream, out loud to everybody. I understand Mary's passion, and, sometimes you have to shake things up to get things moving, but I also am so concerned about my son and other family members of having that exposed to the world, because my hope is that one day he'll be working and in the community again, and I wouldn't want neighbors and everybody else to think that he was a mass shooter, and or even the things that he struggles with. That's no one's business. And I mean, it's really frustrating, but I thought my action then was to join the board and get more educated, because when you read the article, there's not all the facts are there. It's a very one-sided story. And when I did join the board, you see how hard people are working and how strained we are with the resources and just everything. And it's not a super simple fix, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it is a long process and haul. And anyway, I see both sides. I apologize for not speaking up earlier too. I have many times went to sit down and write sort of my opinion, but my life gets in the way too, and I never responded. So I apologize for not responding either, but it did take me aback. And I don't support that type of writing. I think it would harm. I did think it harms the individual. So anyway, that's just my support for Barks, and thank you for bringing that to the attention of the board. That's all.
Thank you, Sherry. Margaret, you're next. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm going to be 80 next week, and I have been reluctant to get very involved with this Behavioral Health Advisory Board. You probably see me as a very quiet, not too hardworking member, and that's true. But this situation really touched me, because I'm a psychologist, or I was, and I worked for between about 1980 to 2006, on and off at the mental health department. There were periods of time I didn't work at the department because I disagreed with some of the people in administration, and I didn't want to put up with them. But I came back, and I worked a lot with schizophrenics. I have very strong feelings about that kind of work. I think that the idea of therapy with schizophrenics is one that needs to be pursued. I was a therapist for many schizophrenics. It's extremely difficult work because by nature of their illness, they resist connecting. And the connection is the core of a therapeutic relationship. I work with them individually and in group. And I just want to say that it's extremely difficult work. And I'm not sure what the staffing at the mental health department is. There probably are not enough therapists willing and able to work with schizophrenics to cover the need. Now, I may be wrong, and Dr. Schipper can correct me, because this stuff starts appearing at about 18. So it's into, and that's one of the reasons I signed up for the transitional program as a committee member. I want to make a comment about Santa Paula, because that's where I started working, in Fillmore and Piru. And I can remember doing a lot of outreach work. I can remember going out to homes. I remember once getting a very severely depressed, psychotic youngster who refused to get out of bed except to pee, and trying to connect with her. And I'm not sure that the staffing and the rules allow for that much involvement, just because of the finances. God help us. I want to make a comment that I spoke in public. I checked with Janice, if I could do this. I went to the Oxnard City Council meeting a couple of months ago. The homelessness program that the mayor of the city manager, Alex Wynn, is pushing was on the agenda, and I spoke on behalf of the transitional age youth. Please get them a special floor just for them. Get these 18 to 20-something-year-olds housed and in therapy. And then I want to make another comment about Chief Whitney. He's an awesome fellow, and I was very happy to hear you're speaking about him.
And that's 3 minutes.
And I think I got my notes all in. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. The next is Claudia Armand. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Mary's letter does a very thorough job of outlining the tremendous gaps in this county's mental health system and the incompetence of various providers along the way. And this in spite of all of the hard work that is happening on a continuous basis and the millions of dollars that are going to provide mental health services. We still have this tragedy of what this young person and his mother had to go through. And at the end of the day, I still don't know the response from staff about what are the step-by-step the steps that are going to be taken to right each of those problems all along the way. Instead, the energy and the passion is being put forth in attacking the messenger. And that is very troubling to me. Mary's letter, if I remember correctly, did not identify somebody. That was a choice that was made by the mother and a choice that was made by the journalist, who I think should have, in good judgment, used an anonymous name, but that was not a choice that Mary made. I have long felt that, it's a challenge to make change from inside the system. And that's why sometimes I felt like maybe this is not the place for me, because I'd rather be on the outside where I don't have to follow the rules and be able to push and create tension that is often necessary to create change. But I'm gonna stay and hope that I can be of some service to this issue. But just a reminder that in every movement to create change, especially in a system that's very entrenched, it's personal stories that galvanize change. And it's often the press that illuminates these problems. And so I think it's important that we keep telling the stories of what the challenges are. Protecting people's identities, yes, but these stories have to be told, and they have to be told over and over, or else I think we're going to be here a decade from now and meaningful, substantial change won't have happened. So thank you.
Next person is Elizabeth. Go ahead, Elizabeth. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say very quickly, thank you very much for your statement, Dr. Johnson. I really appreciate your recognition of the need for dignity and the impact this will have on people's being open for services. I also would like to suggest that this is a good learning moment for family members who are constantly concerned why people will not allow their family members to, will not sign release of information, and why there tends to be mistrust between people who use services and their family members for fear of this kind of actions and stories being told about them without control over their own narratives. So I just hope this is a learning point for everybody about the impact that it has actually on the people that end up being locked up. Thank you.
Okay, Jerry, over to you. There are 3 other individuals who have their hand raised, but over to you first.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. The next one is Mary Hoffner. Your 3 minutes has started.
Yes, a couple of clarifications. No names were used, and also in the article there was fictitious names were used. So there were never any names of the individual. So no laws were violated, no HIPAA laws were violated. But I think one thing that maybe this department is taking full advantage of is the fact that people don't want to tell their stories. And it's a little bit scary for them to tell their stories. And we have some people who are willing to come forward, because I don't believe change is going to happen unless we do tell these stories. These are real stories. A lot of work and process and programs come out of Williams Drive, but do we look to see how those translate in real time on the ground for people who are suffering from these illnesses? And I think that this article gives us a very good opportunity to take a look at where we could have intervened. Where can we look in this scenario of this young man who is struggling to get services? Where did we drop the ball, if at all? Did we drop the ball at all? I don't know, but unless we look, we're not going to be able to improve. And I hope that we're all here because we do believe that we can improve. And I feel like it's not going to serve our clients. It's not going to serve the seriously mentally ill if we try to deflect from the real issues here. And those issues are, how are our programs servicing the people who need the services? If we have some issues, can we take a look? Because it does concern me that the first reaction is to demonize me, to deflect, and to gaslight. A lot of what I did not use names. The mistake that I made was to say I was a BHAB member, and I'll fully own that. I didn't say I was representing the BHAB. I didn't say I am doing this on behalf of the BHAB. I want to make that very clear. But as Claudia said, sometimes change is difficult, and we really need to take a look at our systems to make sure that we are providing what we can provide. So what I would like to do is propose that we form an ad hoc committee, and we look at the different areas where we could have possibly intervened for this young man, because I know this happens a lot as people have reached out to me. And look at where we could possibly fill gaps. We can create a vision. We don't have to implement everything right now, and I'm not saying we don't have programs, we do. But how can we be the best we can possibly be as a county? Because my first and foremost hope is that we can advocate on this board for the seriously mentally ill and get the best services and treatment they could possibly get. And I have belief in that. And so that's why I'm here.
That's 3 minutes. Okay, we have 2 more individuals with their hand raised. The next is Roberta. Go ahead, Roberta, and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Roberta Griego, and I'm the Director of Operations for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I think right today, in what's taking place is the National Alliance on Mental Illness represents everyone from a mild to a severely mental illness. And if you could just hear the hundreds and hundreds of stories that the people in almost 40 years of NAMI Ventura County have heard, it is time that this county goes and tries to take an objective and a great look about mental illness and in Ventura County. And I believe that that can be done by taking a look at letting people from the outside enter into the county system, and let's work together as stakeholders, and especially my organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we could have you sit for hours and hours hearing of stories of the families with mental illness. And I think it's time that the county supervisors take a look at adopting a ad hoc committee or a committee that is with outside organizations, along with working with members of the county system. And let's come up and work together to try to solve some of the issues that are happening to these families with loved ones. Let's work together, like I said, a county and a private outside organization of citizens from this county that are living this experience every day. And there is lacking of services. That is definitely true. If, like I said, if you could sit in my office, Rattan could probably.
Hold on, Roberta, somehow you muted. Go ahead.
So as I was saying, I'm sure Ratan could tell you, as sitting as an executive director for many years here, of what we hear would just about, when you say things bring you to tears, that's what we hear every day. And I also am now sitting on and worked for many years in the county system. And my own people that I worked with didn't know what I have to live with every day, being a stepmom of someone that lives with mental illness, my son, and being out on the street and the services that aren't out there for him. So I hope we can some way start a committee of talking about these situations. It's long past due.
Okay. There are two more hands, it appears, Janice Gardner and then Sherry Valley. So go ahead, Janice, unmute yourself.
Hi, I'll make this brief. Excuse me. I did want to thank Dr. Johnson for her comments, Supervisor Parks, and the board members, and especially our consumer or our public comments. Those are especially poignant, and of course the BHAB members as well. I am going to be going over some protocol and information for the BHAB that Mr. Ramirez mentioned under new business item C, and I just wanted to let you know that there'll be more said during that time, so thank you.
Okay, Sherry Valley. Gain.
I don't seem to have a way to raise my hand. I have unmuted. Is that okay?
So how about you go after Sherry, and just a reminder, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 when you're calling in via the telephone. So we'll take Sherry next, and then you'll be after Sherry.
Okay, I just wanted to real quick, I think what Mary brought up was a really good idea. I really like the ad hoc meetings to actually figure out what we can do to address those problems, especially like people coming from the outside and having these specific issues that maybe we can, somehow check it out, intervene, because, you do want to make sure that if those resources were there, or, that they were giving the proper treatment, or, whatever, they're not proper treatment, I'm sorry, that they, that there was nothing that fell through the hoops, or just something to address that. So I do like that idea that Mary talked about, that ad hoc meeting, just to kind of, see if we can somehow intervene if we're allowed to do that. Anyway, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. So we've got Gain and then Supervisor Parks. Go ahead, Gain.
Hi, I'd like to second Claudia's comments, and I agree with Mary's idea of an ad hoc committee. I think we do need to be looking at these things. Other people know far better than I the cases of people who are falling through the cracks in the desperation of the families, and I think we need to respond to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gain. Okay, go ahead, Supervisor Parks. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
I do appreciate the offer of collaboration instead of, trying to attack. At least that's how it is felt. So I do appreciate that. And I think about, what if we got together like consumers, family members, professionals, people who are in the government, and look to find the gaps in our services. And I go, oh, that's what the BHAB does. That's exactly what the BHAB is supposed to do. So I would like to be able to see that we can look for those gaps in services. The letter talked about issues with the public guardian, issues with the IPU, which is run by not by the Behavioral Health Department. So to be able to bring them to the table, those kind of things really do require collaboration. It does require us working together. So I hope that when we do what we're really charged to do, which is look at gaps in services and enhancing our system, that we will look beyond what the Behavioral Health Department is doing and see if we can do more. Like, I've been wishing that the Behavioral Health Department could oversee the IPU. That to me is something that would make it more seamless. But there are different things that can be done with recommendations. But I would request that our BHAB look into how to make our system better. This isn't a forum just to hear presentations. It's actually to do that work. The other thing that's unrelated that I wanted to just mention is before the Board of Supervisors tomorrow is the change in the BHAB bylaws. And I note that we don't have a requirement that the chair get a majority of votes. And that just to me seems like a no-brainer. So I would just, throw that out to the BHAB if that's something you would like in the bylaws in selecting the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jerry, over to you. There are no other comments on the floor.
I believe the issue of a new member having to be on the board a year is in the Welfare Institutions Code. I think Janice looked that up and found it. Is that true, Janice?
Go ahead and unmute Janice if you're speaking.
About the 2/3 vote?
Yeah.
Yes, that is included. I think what Supervisor Parks is addressing is something else that she's talking about, a majority of votes of the BHAB to elect a chairperson. I think that's not in the bylaws or the WIC that I looked at.
Okay.
Okay. So, but yes, the 2/3 vote definitely is in the bylaws and was in the WIC.
Okay, well, moving on, and we're going to have to really scoot through the agenda from now on, but I just wanted to comment that this was probably the most meaningful discussion we've had in a long time, and I appreciate everybody's openness. And we certainly intend to work together, and we need to refocus. I've always felt we have too many presentations, that we need to spend more time identifying issues, identifying problems, talking to each other and working together. And first and foremost, I just want to clarify that we respect and appreciate the work that the department does, but that doesn't necessarily mean we are always going to agree. And at that point, then we have to resolve our differences by working together. So I think we can achieve a lot moving forward, and in this particular subject matter is one area, and the gaps in service. Supervisor Parks is right. We have to focus more on that than anything else right now. So let's move on. Is there a secretary's report, Mary?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mary.
Yes. 2 board members missed our June general meeting. 1 executive committee member missed this last executive committee. And I just want to make sure, is everyone able to get online with Zoom? Are we having any issues with any board members, or is everyone good? Do we know that, Courtney?
No one has certainly brought it up. Sherry has her hand raised. Go ahead, Sherry. You're on mute.
Since you're talking about attendance, I just wanted to say I missed the adult committee, but it was scheduled on a week, and then they changed it, said it was July vacation week, and switched it to the next week, which was when I took my July vacation. But sorry, I didn't. I just realized I don't think I said why I was absent. But you're referring to general meetings, right? Not the committee meetings.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Just didn't know if it was for all. Okay. Thanks.
And then it looks like we have 2 members whose term is up this year, and I will be reaching out to them. One is up in September, so I will hopefully give them enough time for them to talk to their supervisor to see if they want to continue on. And also, if you're going to be absent and if you feel like it's an excused absence, you can contact me directly, so it doesn't have to go, from Jerry or Janice, and then they have to email me. If you remember, you can contact me directly. And we want to make sure that we try not to get more than 3 unexcused absences in a calendar year. We have some vacancies. We have a vacancy well, now I guess we don't have a vacancy in District 2 anymore. We have a vacancy in District 1. And a reminder to try to figure out how we're going to get a psychiatrist on our board as well. I think that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And what Mary said is really critically important. If you know you're unable to make a meeting, please let us know in advance. You could send it to Mary directly, to Vicky. It doesn't matter, but let us know in advance, like Michael did in terms of not being able to meet today. Okay, let's go on through the old business. And if we could go through this rapidly, I'd appreciate it. One is a status update on the housing work group document and letter.
Sure. So we have the approved cover letter and issue brief per Susan Whitewood. The work group, Gain and Ratan, has not met since that was approved. The next step is creating the list of who it be sent to, and it be sent on behalf of the BHAB.
Okay, so they could go ahead and start working on that.
On the list, correct.
Yeah. And what happens with the list? Can they send out, well, now is not a good time to meet with anybody, but theoretically, if we could meet in person, do they have to have the list approved, or do they are able to go ahead and send the letters?
They'd be able to go ahead and send the letters, just sending them on the behalf of the BHAB.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the next one is the LPS Reform Work Group report and recommendations.
Sure. So as we discussed at the executive meeting, I did go ahead and forward that to County Council. They reviewed it and did cite several concerns. Instead of me commenting here, County Council will be formalizing and sending out an official memo to the BHAB regarding those concerns. In brief, I can say that there are concerns that much of the letter addresses legislative reform at the state level that is outside of the scope of the BHAB, as well as they have issues with the mission statement. And so a formal memo will be developed and will be sent to the BHAB regarding County Council's concerns.
Okay, you know, and I understand that people don't agree with this, but I have to remind everybody that this product was produced primarily with family member input and a consumer. And we know not everybody's going to agree, but that's the feeling. So,
right.
Okay.
Understood. I think County Council's concerned is the BHAB being outside of their scope and their role, and they will be presenting a formal memo.
In terms of the recommendations?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. All right. Ratan, site visit report on crisis residential treatment. And before Ratan starts, you know, at this point, I would recommend we not have any site visits until it's safe to do so. Not a good idea to go into places that have a lot of people, or it's just not safe at this point. So go ahead, Ratan.
Of course, thank you, Jerry. Well, this site visit was to the Ventura Crisis Residential Treatment Program, the CRT, and it took place on March the 2nd. This was just before the COVID issues hit us. So we made it to this site before any restrictions were in place. The site visit team consisted of me and Nancy Borchard, Mary Hafner, and Claudia Armand. This site is a step-down facility, essentially, from an IPU. The CRT was designed, or was originally planned to divert people from the IPU, as well as, in some cases, to give people a chance to get more time in recovery after they've been in the IPU. At this time, it is more of a step down from the IPU rather than a diversion. And I'm going to ask our other team members who are present today, Claudia and Mary, in that order, please, to give us your comments, and I'll conclude at the end. Claudia, go ahead.
I don't want to reiterate everything that we wrote in the report, but I just wanted to highlight two things. This is a wonderful facility that doesn't have an institutional feel to it. And I'm thinking, as people are coming out of a hospital after maybe getting a diagnosis and starting, new medication, what a great place this is, where they have their own room and privacy, and they're really surrounded by staff who care about them. And so from the perspective of the clients, it's a wonderful setting, but also from the perspective of a family member, to know that their loved one is somewhere where they're safe, where they're getting support, and where they're with, you know, professionals who care about them is like so wonderful. And you know, the department should feel very proud about this facility. The other thing I wanted to mention, in the conversations we had with staff there, they talked about the problems at the state level and the obstacles that staff at the state level create when trying to get the, I don't know if I'm saying this right, the licenses or that sort of thing when building new facilities or expanding facilities. And so there's so many barriers to fixing the system, but that seems to be keep getting mentioned repeatedly. And so I think it would be worthwhile to address it with some lobbying, whether we do it as a BHAB or outside the BHAB, but talking to state legislators about the people within the licensing departments that are creating obstacles. That's all.
Thank you. And Mary, are you still there? I suspect Mary.
Looks like Mary is not here.
Yes, that's what it looks like to me. Okay, I'll go ahead. Thank you, Claudia, for those comments. And I agree, Claudia is right. This is a fabulous facility. I was there when the facility was opened, and I've been there many times since then. And it is a warm, comforting place to be. In the past, sometimes it has not been fully occupied. At this time, of course, it is completely, all 15 beds are taken up. And yes, we know there were some challenges with the previous provider toward the end of last year, and the new provider, Golden State Health, came and picked up, and they seem to have had a completely seamless transition, and many of the staff have continued on, and the facility still looks good. So they have a nice outdoor area, which is always good to know, good to have. Of course, there is no smoking allowed on any county property, so that's out. But we did speak with a couple of the staff, and they were both very helpful and friendly with us. And I think if that, as I've mentioned before, that to me, a program is as good as the leader in the program. And both these folks were understanding of folks living with mental illness and the kind of clients who come through there and what they need. And of course, some of the issues that they talked about, one of them comes back to housing again. When there is no housing available, sometimes they have to hang on to residents or clients for a longer period of time, and they reach their 30-day max, and then they do have to be discharged. So that is always a challenge. We'll come back to housing issues at a later date, I'm sure, but that was brought up again and again. That's about it. Any questions? We're ready to answer.
Looks like Liz Warren has her hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Liz.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. I just wanted to make the point that because Claudia mentioned what a great facility it was, and I wanted to let her know that when the facility was being built, when we were literally at the blueprint stage and the early planning stages and the funding stages, there was a very large contingent of clients that were part of the stakeholder group that actually had direct input into the design of the facility. And the reason that there are rooms that only house one client and have a individual bathroom to that room, and the reason the kitchen is the way it is, and the reason there's a bathtub and an outdoor area and a large living area is because of the input from clients that were part of the stakeholder process. In addition to clients having input, family members also had input. As Ratan mentioned, he was part of the early process as well. I think we made tremendous innovation in terms of having a facility like that as part of our continuum of care in the county. And my suggestion is that the next time you do a site visit is I would take a client along with you, because from what I see here, there were no clients on that site visit. And it may be that you had reached out and a client wasn't available, but I think whenever we do a site visit of any facility, board and care, IPU, CRT, that we have a client be part of the group that goes out to the site. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments.
We're Tom.
Yes.
Mary
Yeah.
Hoffner has her hand
Yes, I
raised.
understand. But to respond really quickly, yes. The reason there was not a client was this is restricted to BHAB board members, and it was put out to the board members to see who would be interested in attending, and that's who came along. Mary has joined us, rejoined us. She was cut off briefly. Mary, you have any more comments on the CRT before we conclude?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mary.
Sorry, I gotta get used to this. I assume everyone covered pretty much what I'm probably gonna say, so I don't want to reiterate, but it seemed like there were not that many people there, which was interesting. I mean, a lot of people were outside. I will say that the outdoor environment seemed very relaxing, and I thought that was a good part of the tour. And also, if we could have a number of those CRTs, I think it would be helpful. The interesting thing, we had a conversation with two of the doctors there, and I think that was another enlightening part of it, is that I think that this county is starting to look at the possibility of having a facility with 45 beds, some of those forensic beds. And so we did get into a discussion about that, which we could maybe talk about in the ad hoc committee that I brought up earlier. But other than that, I thought it was a good visit, and very clean, relatively new facility.
Thank you, Mary, and that concludes our report.
We've been talking about performance improvement data for the past few meetings, and I had a discussion with Pete, and Pete is going to do a little overview of what's going on in terms of the data being collected and where they would like to go with data collection and evaluation. Pete, you want to go ahead? Pete Pringle.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so like Chair Harris mentioned, in the last couple of executive committee meetings, there have been several questions and discussions regarding what the department is currently doing in terms of performance measure reporting for mental health services. So I was asked to kind of give an overview of what we're doing now, where we see gaps, and our plans going forward. I did put together, for that purpose, a brief PowerPoint, and I'll try to make it even more brief in the interest of time. Courtney, am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Is it being shared now?
Not yet. No, you have to, I think, press the second button, share.
I'm sorry, I have to do something?
So yeah, so when you, on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see the little green button with the upward arrow that says share screen.
Okay, got it.
And then click, once you select, then it'll automatically default to the desktop, and just click share.
All righty.
Okay, we see it now.
I do.
Yep. And we
Everybody
do too.
else sees that, I take it?
Everybody does, yep.
All righty, so probably best to start with the definition of what a performance measure is. And I think this statement captures it pretty well. It's a component, one component of a structured, data-driven process aimed at ensuring that equity, effectiveness, efficiency, and quality goals are pursued and achieved by the department. As I said, it's one component of a process, and I think this graphic kind of spells it out pretty well. We have our performance standards and the different steps underneath performance standards. And this is really establishing our organizational standards and goals to improve our operations and our practices. Once that's accomplished, we have our performance measures. Again, use of measures to assess the achievement of the standards. Of course, our reporting, analyzing and interpreting the data and reporting broadly to all stakeholders. And then the quality improvement process. And again, using data-driven decisions to improve our processes, our programs, our policies, and overall our outcomes. And again, that should involve a stakeholder process. Okay, so what are we currently measuring and reporting? So we have a number of different requirements as far as reporting measures at the state level and the federal level, and this kind of breaks it out. So at the federal and state, we have our Department of Healthcare Services, and we have to do annual reports to them. EQRO reports, our External Quality Review Organization. I think that was mentioned earlier. That report is posted on our website. Reporting on our Mental Health Services Act programs. We have grant-funded programs, and these are measures that are a condition of receiving the funds. So when we apply for a grant, that's part of our application, is that we will measure certain metrics as far as how well the program is doing. And we have our ongoing additional ad hoc requests that can come up at any time, state level, county level, department, or other. And typically these are in response to immediate needs. And then we have our BCBA specific measures, which I'll get into later. Just to spend a couple of quick moments on what it is that we are reporting, what the required reports involve. So for the Department of Healthcare Services, they have a system called a Performance Outcome System. And these are the domains, excuse me for a second. Sorry about that. These are the domains that they review on an annual basis: access and engagement of services, service appropriateness, effectiveness, linkages to other services, cost effectiveness, and consumer satisfaction. They do that by mining data that we provide on an annual basis. They pull from different systems. They also employ a biannual consumer perception survey using it's administered with a portion of our clients. And they gather those results. And then we have to provide to them a quality assessment performance improvement plan. And of course, they do their triennial review. Now, included in the PowerPoint, I have links here to those reports on the state websites. I'm not going to, in the interest of time and possible complications, I'm not going to launch these now, but just so you know that they're there when you get the PowerPoint. Next, we have the EQRO annual on-site review. These are the domains that they review each time they come. Beneficiaries served and cost, our penetration rates, that being the percentage of Medi-Cal beneficiaries that we're serving, count of intensive services that we provide to our youth and their families. And then they have a number of different metrics that they look at in regards to psychiatric hospitalizations. Again, they do an annual on-site review. They put it together in a very comprehensive report. Like I said, was mentioned earlier, and here is a link to that report. And then, as I mentioned, the Mental Health Services Act program reviews, the review of their programs. These are more general and they're county and program specific. We compile these reports and these metrics into an annual report and a 3-year report, as you're probably aware. And again, I have a link to those reports here. Okay, so that brings us to our behavioral health specific reporting, our internal reports. And these, I'm going to go, the next 2 slides have the 5 domains that we're currently focusing on, and then some indicator topics that we want to do a better job at measuring and reporting out on. So we have access to services, points of access, time to service, client served, and engagement with vulnerable and underserved populations. Adequacy of services, do we have enough providers? to provide our service, for our client population. Are the services we are providing, are they well aligned with our client needs? Are we providing cultural and linguistic services based on client needs? And we want to look at our quality of services. Are our staff adequately trained? Are we assuring beneficiary protection and privacy? And then again, what is the level of our beneficiary or client satisfaction with our services? And then we have beneficiary outcomes, and this is probably the area most in need of improving our data gathering and reporting, focusing specifically on clinical outcomes for our clients, their level of functional impairment, what's their living and housing status, hospitalizations, incarcerations, and placements, and again, the employment status and academic status for our youth. This is an area we're really focused on currently in building more reports and doing a better job at providing that information to our operations and our stakeholders. And then lastly, we have efficiency. Are we getting the most bang for our buck? I mean, how many high cost beneficiaries are we serving? What's our average cost per client and per service? And what's the level of our approved claims versus our disallowances? So that's something we want to continuously monitor. And again, we are collecting currently a lot of data on these different domains and indicators, but we certainly can do a better job. So, I mean, what do we next steps? So these are the areas we want to, are the steps we want to take going forward. Identifying additional performance goals and metrics. We know there are gaps in our reporting, particularly with focus on client-specific outcomes, like I mentioned, and our program performance. We want to do that in collaboration with operations and our Avatar EHR team, and again, involve an ongoing stakeholder process in this. Improved enhancement and structure in our data collecting and mining, and increasing our levels of reporting. I mean, again, building out more reports at all levels, region, department, division, et cetera. So we could provide that information related to our performance. And then increasing the communication, developing multiple formats to serve different needs at different time intervals. So that kind of brings up a question that's probably obvious. I mean, why haven't we done this work already? And the short answer is we haven't had the staffing or the resources in our quality department historically to really take this on. I mean, they've been overtaxed, you could say, yes, keeping up with the required reports that we do on an annual basis. But now, I mean, in this past year, we have built a remarkable team of highly skilled individuals who have already made an impact as far as our building up our performance measures and reporting. And they are very enthusiastic to continue to do so. So that's a very, very brief overview of what's happening with our performance measures and reporting now and where we want to go. But it kind of brings me back to my original question. I mean, what role, I mean, would the BHAB members be interested in playing, either with our existing stakeholder meetings, like our Quality Management Action Committee, which does have some BHAB representation. We could enhance that, or there's been talk of ad hoc committee, and that's something we had been discussing as well, perhaps putting together an ad hoc committee that's particularly or specifically focused on helping us build out, a better performance measures and reporting structure. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or comments.
It looks like the first comment on the floor is Mary. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to know, do you have a timeline when you are going to convene the stakeholders to take a look at these metrics?
So we currently have, like I said, a stakeholder committee. That's our QMAG. And they meet on a quarterly basis. And in that meeting, they go over, and I think Gain is a member of that committee. They go over our quality assessment and performance improvement plan, and then they provide the input for what they think. There are multiple stakeholders involved and they provide the input of what they think we should be measuring going forward. So that's in place now. I mean, it's something that we could increase the frequency of. Or again, as far as the ad hoc committee, that's just in the, we're just really kind of in the conceptual phase of what that might look like. And again, something we'd be willing to discuss with the board.
One of my questions is, how do you determine what success looks like? Is it written down what our stated goals are and the outcomes that we want to see? So for instance, is one of our stated goals that we would like to reduce the number of people who are seriously mentally ill and homeless? Is one of our goals that we would like to reduce the number of seriously mentally ill in our jails? I mean, because if I don't have some kind of a benchmark of understanding what success looks like, then I don't know what we're measuring.
Right, and again, there are benchmarks established, again, by the Department of Healthcare Services and EQRO, and we have our own as well, by program and by division. But that is what we really need to do the work on. We need to do a better job at identifying specific benchmark goals for our programs, and then again by the divisions. I mean, you're mentioning homelessness and incarcerations. Of course, that's one of our focus. But we're in the process now of establishing what those benchmarks would be.
Okay. Jerry has his hand raised. Go ahead, Jerry. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Pete and I discussed an ad hoc group. And if anybody's interested, please send me, email me with your name. But as you know, the Welfare and Institution Code gives us a responsibility to review performance outcome measures and the data on them. So that's what I was going to help the department and Pete try to come up with. And if anybody else is interested, like I said, let me know and we could work on this together. But it is important that we have some good measures to look at, evaluate, question, whatever.
Right, and again, those measures, I mean, we do need a good, solid stakeholder process in establishing those measures.
Right.
There are no other comments, raised hands on the floor.
Okay, thank you, Pete. We look forward to working with you and wish you luck in the development of the data you're looking at accumulating.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay. The next item we really don't have to discuss very much because Janice already gave you an update in her board comment, but next month we will be having somebody from the Sheriff's Department talk to us about the pretrial detention facility and the treatment program. So that's something we'll look at next month. Karen, Sahota has an agenda item in terms of establishing a BHAB work group participation for MHSA. Karen, you want to go ahead?
I do. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Karen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, it's been quite a meeting with a lot of discussion, and I hate to throw one more piece at you, but as we know, COVID has really impacted our mental health system statewide. and our dollars that go towards the efforts that we provide here in Ventura County are going to be greatly impacted. I'm sure many of you have heard the governor's speech on $53 billion shortfall, in which we receive our funding from sales tax, we receive our funding from income tax, and all of those are just, I mean, so significantly impacted. It's really going to be difficult for our state. And so to hear all the efforts that you would all like to see go forward, this is going to be a challenging time because our money is going to be reduced. And so the MHSA, we are looking at a potential 25% reduction in funding over the next couple years. And so what we are wanting to do is put together a work group. And I really want to bring to your attention as well is and it's just been so great because really a lot of what you guys have talked about today really just falls right into what we want to do. So one thing was providing, along with what Supervisor Parks said, providing an area where, and I believe Elizabeth as well said that this work group with the BHAB that we're asking to do really needs to be broken up into our priorities. And so consumers should be 50% of our committee. And so we are asking that 50% of our committee members that are identified as consumers, and Elizabeth said consumers, clients, peers. I mean, I appreciated her as a community member being able to identify that as well, as not just to say consumers. We are looking at, so the best way to probably do this is to send over to Vicki Paula Quinn your name if you're interested, and the area that you represent. And so when we look at priority populations based on MHSA, we look at consumers, and I would like 5. I guess I should also preface that this committee is 10, because the amount of work that we need to do, we really can't go over more than 10 folks because we will be bringing in staff as well to help answer questions. We may bring in providers to help give information on their programs as we look at reducing our programs. It could be reductions, it could be sunsets, it could be recommendations, but that's what we really are looking at in this committee. So we are looking at 5 consumers or identified peers, clients, or consumers, 5. And then the other 5 is really a family member. It could be TAY, older adults, our youth and families, 0 to 25. Our 5 priority populations at the state are Hispanic, African American, Asian Pacific Islander, Native American, and LGBTQ. So if you identify in any of those 5 categories. Also, if we look at the makeup of a BHAB or any of our committees, it could be a professional organization as well, such as law enforcement, public defender, Office of Education. So looking at 5 in that aspect as well. So I think the easiest way would be to just have everyone, and then I probably think I'd feel the most comfortable is getting together. Jerry, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but you and I would want to do it in a fair way. And so if we had multiple in a certain category, I probably would put it a name in a hat and pull it out in front of Jerry on a Zoom call. And be able to make sure that it's equitable and that everyone has a fair chance to be part of this committee. The other thing I really wanted to bring to your attention is when we look at another topic that was brought up earlier and how we need to look at MHSA is you guys are talking about gaps in services, and VCBH spent over $100,000 on a very thorough needs assessment, one of the most thorough needs assessment in the state of California. Most people with a population of our size do not get over 5,000 people in our community responding to a mental health survey. And so the 4 main topics were access to mental health services, depression, homelessness, and substance use. Now, as we look at substance use in MHSA, we really look at those prevention efforts and how can we really work with those beginning dual diagnosis so that especially now with COVID and especially now with people being in their homes, the anxiety, the depression. What we already know as an organization is that these earliest signs, if we do not look at those in the prevention side, they will become our chronically mentally ill of our future. And so really looking at how that intercepts and interacts as well. And so there's a lot that we'll discuss. We will not be holding the meetings until probably the middle of August. Obviously, this is a lot of time to prep, but we have fiscal really having to identify every single program and how much money's been spent. And so we're really trying to get some solid information. And Jerry, I promise you, it is not a spreadsheet. I will give the work group 1 page per contract with all the information on it. So we will have numbers served. We will have currently the QI department under Pete's lead is doing an amazing job in being able to just really transform our 3-year plan and what everyone's doing into 1 page documents for each of our contracts. And then just really looking at what our state guidelines are right now. But again, we're looking at a 25% cut. And so that's about $8.5 million. So we just want to be mindful that this is not going to be a rushed process. We really do want to make sure that we are mindful. After we have the recommendations from the work group, we will be doing a public town hall. So that will be advertised, and we will be doing a public town hall. So anybody is welcome to also share their thoughts with regards to any sort of reductions. And then from there, the department does make the decisions based on all the information that they gather. And we will be putting in any final changes will go into our next annual report. So this whole process will be ready to be in our next annual report.
Okay, now the 10 people are to be BHAB members.
I know that not all will be. Some consumers or identified consumers will be from the public, because I know that there are not 5 on our BHAB. And we do have a few that have already asked to be part of our process.
Okay, but from the board's point of view, you just want to know who on the board is interested.
And what category, what priority population do they represent? So let me tell you too, if we have anyone on the board that identifies as a consumer, I will put them in the consumer side, and that still leaves you 5 spots. So the idea is if anybody on the board identifies as a consumer, they have the priority in those 5 spots. And then we still have those other spots open for any other of the BHAB members.
Okay.
But I need to know what category people are representing.
And the categories are?
I will, there's TAY, so transitional age youth, or I'll start from the beginning, 0 to 25. So really our youth and family, school age, any school, and then TAY, specifically TAY, though I know they fit into the 0 to 25. 0 to 25 is a priority under PEI. TAY obviously is a priority under CSS. So that's why I keep those separate. Older adults, and then family members, and then any of our 5 priority populations in the state. Again, those were Hispanic, African American, Asian Pacific Islander, Native American, and LGBTQ. Then, those are those 5 priorities. Then we have any of our major departments, such as if it was the public defender's office, law enforcement, a school, a VCOE type of school, or anybody on the board that would identify as a specific agency.
Okay, so if any of our board members or people that are attending the meeting today are interested, please send your name and the category to Vicki, and then I'll get together with Karen and we'll decide. I have to see the inside of her hat before we pick any names. But...
Absolutely, I'll get a clear glass bowl and I'll just show you all. I'll write down the names and drop them in. We will do it with complete transparency.
Good.
And if anyone else wants to participate in the picking of the names out of the hat, you are welcome to.
Okay, so do that this week. sometime as soon as possible. And then we'll look at the results and I'll get together with Karen. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next item, I don't think we have to discuss very much at all. I think people got the idea. I'll just state that we could say whatever, do or say whatever we want as a public, as a private citizen. And we could mention that we're a member of the BHAB, but we're writing on behalf of ourselves as a private citizen. And without going into great detail, is there anything else you want to add, Janice?
Yeah, I think I should just read a couple of things from the WIC, Jerry. I know we're under a time crunch, but I think, these are important because they do come from our Welfare and Institutions Code. So if you would indulge me just a couple of seconds or a minute or two to read that.
Go ahead.
So that, because we have a lot of new members on the BHAB and they may not know what the protocols are. So
go ahead.
Okay, number one, the California Welfare and Institution Code provides the duties of the BHAB as a public board. We must use process to capture and communicate the recommendations of the board as they pertain to the board's duties. When a member steps out on their own, sorry. Oh.
Go ahead, Janice.
Oh.
There was just some feedback in the background. I muted another party.
Do you want to wait until Mary comes back?
Well, she's actually already heard it at the executive committee.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Janice, are you still there? Looks like we may have lost Janice. No, there she is.
I'm here. I'm
okay,
here.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. When a member steps out on their own to represent their views, they should not represent themselves through their affiliation to the BHAB, nor should they give the impression that they are speaking on behalf of the board. Perception is a big part of this as well, so we have to be really careful. So to avoid confusion, when speaking as a private citizen in an advocacy situation to other advocacy groups or members of the public, one should specifically state that they are speaking on behalf of themselves individually, and then after that is clear, they may mention that they are a member of the BHAB as well. So to avoid any misunderstandings, when sending emails, documents, or reports, or when speaking in public, as Margaret did, and she did it absolutely perfectly, BHAB members should be specific also. So you want to send your email or document as Jane or John Doe, private citizen, Jane or John Doe, resident, and then below that, add your BHAB affiliation. Also, communication from BHAB members to other members. We can very easily be in violation of the Brown Act. So we have to understand that the Brown Act precludes discussion, either verbal or written, among a quorum of a board outside of a public meeting. And this includes emails and phone conversations. So we can't talk among ourselves about an item that may be on the agenda. And then the seventh thing is the HIPAA confidentiality. Neither board members nor staff may make public someone else's medical history, nor can they mention the person's name unless specifically given authorization from that individual. And this is all the more important when dealing with sensitive issues like mental health, as was discussed earlier in our meeting. So I think that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or you want to send something, you can always go by myself or with Jerry, and we can give you the guidelines and protocols that are outlined in the Welfare and Institutions Code and in our bylaws. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next two items I have on here, with your agreement, we could defer to the next agenda given the time. Does anybody have a problem with doing that?
Nope, I don't. Anyone else?
Okay, so we'll put those on the next agenda. Please review the mission, vision, and we'll discuss the plan for the annual report at that time. Future presentations, we know about the jail-based. What I'm proposing is we defer all additional presentations till a later date because we have a lot of other more important things to talk about in the upcoming meetings. If anybody has any objections to that, please let me know. Okay, contracts. You have before you a list of the contracts and the detail. Does anybody have any questions on any of those contracts or comments?
Currently,
Okay,
there are no questions on with raised hands.
good.
Mary
Okay.
Hoffner now has raised her hand. She has a question or comment.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, I have a question, two questions. One is, so we don't, as a BHAB, we don't vote on these contracts. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, and then my second question is, how many people currently are we serving at facilities outside of the county? And how much is that cost? And has that cost gone up or down this last year?
Well, I think the first question is, do we know how many? Do we keep track of how many are?
Well, a lot of the contracts that are that have been delineated in our agenda notes are out of county placements, and so I think that our county probably should know that information.
Okay.
So thank you for those questions. Yes, we do keep track of that. I know that when our CEO, Michael Powers, came to your board, he had that information and provided that information at that time. We can go back and we can get the current information with the amounts to provide that to you, because that information that was provided at that time would now be stale. But we are more than happy to provide you with the number and the amounts.
And just to make sure that you don't use anyone's names that are at those facilities, just to confirm, because we don't want to violate anyone's HIPAA rights.
Absolutely not. That is of utmost importance to our department. Thank you.
Yeah, we just need numbers.
Right. We would never provide you the names of the clients. Thank you.
Okay.
And then it looks like Janice Gardner has her hand raised. Go ahead, Janice. You're on mute.
Sorry, Jerry. It's not about the contracts. It's about something else on the agenda that we can discuss after the contracts are finished.
Okay. Anybody else on contracts? Okay, go ahead, Janice.
Okay. I just wanted to know, we had talked about this ad hoc committee, and Pete mentioned something about the ad hoc committee also. And I thought we might want to discuss next month at exec and then at the general meeting, forming this ad hoc committee, whether it's through Pete's purview. And, you know, I know that we're going to have the one with Kieran and MHSA as well, but that's short-lived. So I just didn't want to I wanted to make sure that we put that on the agenda so that we can actually form this committee somehow, if you're in agreement, of course.
Well, I had asked for people that are interested to communicate that to me. So I think that would be a more efficient way to do it.
Okay, so they should contact you and Vicki about that committee as well as Kieran's committee?
Right.
As well as MHSA? Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Before we end, I have two last comments. One is, we need to remember that the work we do is very important, and we need to behave in a way that says that if we don't do it, no one's going to do it. So we need to be very persistent in what we do and very diligent. And the final thing is, I had an opportunity to communicate to Mike Powers my support for what the county management team is doing in terms of protecting us in this really trying situation with the coronavirus. I'm sure these people in health, behavioral health, public health, and the administration and the Board of Supervisors are spending massive amounts of time trying to do these things that help protect everyone in our community. And I would just suggest that as individuals, if you agree, please communicate that to the county leadership. I'm sure they would appreciate it. They're really in this 100%, and I certainly appreciate it. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you for a great meeting.